There are many things that are going on in the world today, but there's some things that get special attention, particularly on cable news. One of them is the continuing saga of Roger Stone, an individual who at one time I was even his lawyer many, many years ago when he got into difficulty, was alleged to have engaged in a swinger party at the San Diego Republican Convention in 1996. I got the media off his back at that time. He was also my campaign manager when I ran for the U.S. Senate for a few weeks before I learned that he was actually doing other things and representing Al Sharpton, if you can believe that, in a various political endeavors up in New York. He told me he was going to see his father, but he was representing Al Sharpton. And also he brought all of his people into my campaign who bought equipment. And when they left with my equipment. They misappropriated that equipment. I didn't deal with him for many, many years, but he rose his head, his ugly head rose again many, many years later when he attacked my client, Jerry Corsi, who, like him, was involved in the Robert Mueller witch hunt investigation. Corsi was not indicted. He did not lie under oath. He did not threaten witnesses. He did not obstruct justice, but Roger Stone was. And now the false narrative is continuing to be propagated that somehow Roger Stone was persecuted for his prosecution. Well, you had to attend that trial, and I did. I monitored it on behalf of Dr. Corsi because Dr. Corsi had been subpoenaed by Robert Mueller and by Stone to testify. And I sat there for 2 weeks, and there was not one witness presented by Roger Stone or his defense counsel. In fact, Stone, who's never short on words and likes to shoot his mouth off, wouldn't even take the stand. He was convicted in his own words. He was convicted in the emails and texts which he had written. And even his lawyers had written letters which were false. They were lucky that they were not indicted along with Stone. So I'm watching very briefly Sean Hannity last night. Just happened to be on. I don't generally watch him because I can't take listening to the stuff that he says over and over and over again with the same guests who do nothing, just go in there and pontificate. And he says that Roger Stone did not get a fair trial. He says that in passing as he's referencing what's happening with regard to the policeman in Atlanta as to whether he will get a fair trial given the lynching that's occurring there at this point in time. And I'm not saying that that police officer did things that were completely right, but certainly he didn't need to be indicted for first-degree murder. I mean, this is, in effect, a lynching. And that's what it is, mob mentality. So I agree with Hannity, at least with regard to that. But to compare Roger Stone not getting a fair trial to what may happen in Atlanta is ridiculous. Or to compare Roger Stone to what's happening with General Michael Flynn, who obviously got a raw deal. He did the wrong thing. He had a Democrat lawyer defend him at Covington and Burling. They threw him under the bus. They told him to get up there and plead guilty when he wasn't guilty, and now he's in a fix. And you can understand, even though I'm convinced that Judge Sullivan will let Flynn go, why the judge is somewhat angry, because you can't take that verbatim, you're guilty, and then all of a sudden say you're not. So, I tell it like it is, and I want the general to get off. I think he's a good man. I know his brother, Joe, and he didn't deserve what he got. But Roger Stone did deserve what he got. And the telling tale of this, the moral to the story of this, is that you can't go out there screaming that you didn't get a fair trial when you presented little to no evidence at all. Nada, nothing, zilch, no testimony. And, Hannity needs to do his homework. He doesn't do his homework. That's why he repeats everything over and over again. I think he's probably the least intelligent person on television, short of Don Lemon of CNN, and doesn't even do his homework to find out what's going on so he can sound intelligent. Now, I say this as a warning to President Trump. If you go ahead and pardon Roger Stone, you now are 8 points behind Joe Biden. And it creates an impression with independent voters that you don't care about the law, you don't respect the law, you're not the law and order president. Now, we need you, President, to step up to the plate now with regard to what's going on in Seattle, with regard to what's going on around the country in this persecution of police officers. I represent police officers in Philadelphia. I'm going to be bringing a lawsuit for reverse discrimination in that regard. They were hacked into by a group called the Plainview Project and most likely financed by George Soros into their private social media accounts. They didn't say anything that was that objectionable, hardly anything at all, and they were fired many, many months ago. This is just one part of what's going on with the police today, where you're going to be left defenseless. Now, sure, police need to be held to account, but this mob mentality to lynch them is inappropriate, and they're going to be quitting in droves. And see what happens then, not just in the inner cities with regard to protecting your home and your hometown. And that's my message for today. Listen carefully to what you hear on cable news, because it's frequently not correct. And don't get addicted to it. It's become like drugs. Listen to Radio America. Listen to my podcast. Listen to my radio show. Listen to others who can tell the truth in social media. And in that regard, we're fighting Google, YouTube. We're in the courts. As others just complain. I was listening to Senator Ted Cruz, and he made a lot of good points this morning. He was on cable news about Google, YouTube. He's right. But who's doing something? It's your Freedom Watch. Who's doing something with regard to China and the coronavirus? It's your Freedom Watch. We sued China. Class action for $21 trillion for the damage they have done, not just in Texas, but in Jerusalem. We're going to soon be bringing a case in Florida, and I have a criminal case at The Hague to hold the communist Chinese leadership to account and throw them in prison where they belong for harming this country and the world. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, contribute to our cause, see if you qualify for our class actions, see if you can assist and become part of our Justice League. Do something. Just don't be entertained by Fox News. Actually do something and turn it off and listen to other sources of news which at least tell you the truth, or at least try to tell you the truth, as particularly as I see it. So thank you. God bless. Stay safe and pray for this country, because we're hanging by a thread right now. And the president himself, who I love, needs to step up to the plate and do more than just talk, but act. And he should be supporting Freedom Watch in what it's doing, as frankly, his Justice Department, because under Attorney General Bill Barr, he has no Justice Department. Share this podcast. You can find it on iTunes, Spotify, Roku, Amazon Fire, Facebook, Twitter, freedomwatchusa.org, radioamerica.com, and pray for the sake of our nation. I'll be back tomorrow with another special edition of our podcasts, and listen to our radio show this weekend, Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Thank you for listening to me.